It is a cold, dry evening here in New York City, and my voice is equally dry and cold. It's from a cold. It's developing from a cold. A cold is developing. I just got back from Texas. I was in Texas for a week. It might be from that. It was very dry in Texas. It was very, very dry in Texas. I was in Dallas, and then I was in Austin. I was in Dallas for Vid Summit, of all things. I wasn't there on my own. I was there for work. But I got to talk to some amazing creators. It was really inspiring. I got to talk to a guy who was literally strapped to a gaming chair. He might still be strapped to the gaming chair. Alex, if you're still strapped to the gaming chair, I'm praying for you. I hope everybody else sends you their thoughts and prayers, because it's been days. So maybe we should check it out. Go check out his video. See if he's still strapped. Great time. Austin is amazing. I wish I had more time there. And it prompted me to make this video. More on that later. People always ask me how I got into photography, and I always say it's because I'm a visual thinker, but I'm a terrible drawer. I can't draw. I was always that kid, as many of us were, who was like sitting in middle school art class, trying desperately to like draw grass and just making scribbles. And then I would look over at the kid next to me, and they're drawing like their own original character, and it looks so good, and it's like anatomically correct and well shaded. It might have been like a wolf person, it might have been their fursona, but it was still great. It was still going up in the hall, whereas I was getting a C on mine because art is objective, apparently. I'm okay. I'm not bitter. I can't draw. So I need another way to express my visual imagination. Enter photography. Enter my brother going to cinematography school and me being like, ooh, I want to do what they're doing. But also because, I wanted to experiment. So I picked up my mom's Nikon D something or another, and I started taking photos. Really enjoyed it. Then I upgraded to the GH4, which is a great camera. The only problem I have with it is its micro four thirds sensor, and that's polarizing because a lot of people love micro four thirds. It has plenty of benefits. It's lightweight, right? It creates lightweight bodies, lightweight lenses, faster read speeds too as well. There's a million reasons. Battery life, right? There's so many reasons why micro four thirds is good. What it's not good for is the field of view. Polarizing again, but it's just not. To get a wide field of view on a micro four thirds sensor, we're talking about getting into the single digit millimeter equivalent on micro four thirds, where 8 millimeter becomes 16 millimeter. Like, unless you're buying a speed booster, we're talking about getting these lenses that are so incredibly wide that you sacrifice any amount of depth of field that you might have inside of them. For a very long time, my widest lens was this lens right here. The Olympus 28mm f2.8. This is a OM mount vintage lens, all manual. Beautiful lens. I love this lens. And it took some beautiful pictures on my GH4, but it's still basically a 60mm equivalent. That's still so telephoto. So I made the switch. When it was time to upgrade, I bought the X-T3, which is an APS-C sensor, and I put this lens on that camera. And I was blown away by how wide it felt. Like, now suddenly a 40mm equivalent field of view on this thing. It was incredible. I was able to capture the environment along with my subjects and still get some amount of separation and depth of field, and it felt organic and it was nice. It was like, I started thinking in a new way. So cut to however many years later, I made the investment in this lens, the Viltrox. This is the 33. There we go. The Viltrox 23mm f1.4. 35mm equivalent. And again, revolutionary, truly. Like, suddenly having a 35mm equivalent, having this wider field of view, I started thinking about framing in ways that I had never thought about before. I started composing my images differently, my video differently. This just lived on my X-T3 for a very long time. And then cut to again, talking about the lens that is currently on the camera, which is the Viltrox 13mm f1.4. This is quite literally the widest lens I have ever personally shot on. I shot 24mm on a full frame camera. I shot 16mm on this camera. 13mm is essentially a 19 to 20 or so equivalent focal length, and it's insane. I've never been able to compose images like this before. Shooting with a 20mm equivalent lens feels so intimate. It really feels like you're right there wherever that photo was taken. People will say that the human eye has a field of view around 40mm, around 35mm, and that might be true, but when we look at an image, we're looking at the image in context, and we're taking it all in. Shooting on a 20mm gives you all the context, and then you can really start looking at that image. It places you right there. It's so intimate. And when I was putting a flash on this camera to go along with this lens, it was like taking pictures on a super high quality point and shoot. I was capturing images like never before. I started to experiment with how I was using my flash. I was sending it through glasses and other things like that to get different patterns of light. I don't know, it just invigorated me as I was using it. I've taken some of my favorite images on this lens, and I have to credit it to the fact that I started thinking differently. It's that revolutionary thing where once you have a new way of visualizing the world, you start composing differently. And I think back to being on Micro Four Thirds and not being able to have a field of view like this, and I think about it literally stifling my creativity, truly, because you are fundamentally missing out on being able to represent the world in a new way. And as somebody who thinks very visually and wants to express themselves visually, having this new tool gives me so much more to do. It's incredible. It's really incredible. I'm kind of a Fujifilm fanboy, and I'm kind of a Viltrox fanboy. I now own 3 Viltrox lenses. I also own the 33mm f1.4, which is about a 50mm equivalent, because it's affordable. I mean, each one of these lenses was this was the most expensive one at like $300. I got it used, but these other ones were sub $300. It gives you so much versatility. I'm rambling now, but this is all to say that having these options and having the experience of shooting on this, because I feel like I'm still like gesturing inside of a field of view where I'm like, oh, I don't want to go outside my bounds. My bounds are out here on this lens. It's incredible. I'm raving. I'm literally just like, oh, it's incredible. But I'm really excited by this lens. I mean it when I say that I've taken some of my favorite images on this lens. I think also being able to shoot on something this wide, now I start thinking about the opposite too. I'm like, oh, what would this look like at 100mm or, a 75mm lens? Viltrox, if you wanted to send me a 75mm lens that you have made, I know you have one, and I could take some photos and review it, I would be happy to do that. And it's not going to happen, but it does make you start to think about that. It makes you start to look at the world differently, which is really cool. I got this lens specifically for the trip to Vid Summit because I knew that I was going to be taking a lot of video for my company and a lot of photo for my company. I just knew that my 35mm was not going to cut it in terms of capturing the scope of the event and capturing the scale and just getting the magnitude of that place, especially in Texas, because everything is bigger than Texas. Yeehaw. I knew I needed something wider than 35mm, and I've been eyeing this lens for quite some time, so I decided to pull the trigger, and I'm so happy that I did. I don't even want to talk about like the technical side of this lens. I really don't, because I think that we can get lost in tech specs. I don't really care. I mean, I do care if it's not autofocusing correctly if that performance is poor. But for my purposes, at least, this lens performed amazingly. Grabbing focus was super quick, hit basically all the time. Great contrast, great colors. I feel like purchasing a lens or anything really in 2023, unless you really, just like have terrible luck, you're going to get something great. You're going to purchase a great lens. You're going to purchase a great camera. I don't think you can really go wrong these days. And I'm so happy that Viltrox, they were the first ones. They were the first ones to really open up the Fujifilm mount, because normally getting all of these lenses and a 13mm f1.4, it would cost like $2,000. Anyway, now I'm just rambling. This is all to say that I am over the moon about this lens. I can't praise it enough. I can't remember the last time that I got a piece of gear that excited me this much, that made me want to go out and practice my art, that made me think differently about how I was practicing my art, about composing my images. Like, not since I got my first Viltrox lens, the 23mm, and I had this wide field of view. It's even wider, but now I'm thinking about longer lenses and everything. I gotta save up for that 75mm. Unless, of course, Viltrox sends it to me. You don't have to. Please? Just kidding. Please? You don't have to. No pressure. Anyway. That's all.